welcome to Let's Talk Webinars, the series in which we, from WebinarGeek, will tell you everything about webinars, of course. My name is Caroline and I'm a content creator at WebinarGeek, and of course I brought my colleagues with me today, so guys, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Of course, my name is Brian, I'm head of marketing here at WebinarGeek, and together with...
My name is Jan Willem, I'm a content creator at WebinarGeek.
Perfect, welcome guys, and thank you for being here, of course. In this episode, we're going to talk about the most important thing for your webinar, which is...
preparing, of course.
Of course. Preparing your webinar can either make or break your webinar, so I'm very curious about how you guys prepare for your webinar and what your game plan is.
Yeah.
So, Brian.
Yeah. Well, when I was already thinking about how to get into this subject and tell more about the subject, I thought there was really a division between your first webinar and webinar number 10 or something like that. Especially with your first webinar, you want to focus on preparing the lights, the camera, the hardware, the software. But then there is of course also webinar number 10, where you already know how to do things. You probably already have your favorite setup. Doesn't matter if it is in a studio or at home office space. And then the most important thing I think for preparing number X webinar that you're gonna host is to really keep on focusing on that what your purpose is with your webinar. The quality is probably okay because you have done this already a couple of times. You can maybe improve with that. But I think what a lot of people forget is what is actually the goal that I have with this webinar? What do I want to, what's the purpose? Achieve, yeah. Indeed. So that was my first,
It's an interesting thought to build up on that is actually what I see in preparation is two things. Either the technical part, indeed, the lights, the setup, which is very important. The dry run, which is even if it's your 100th webinar, it's still important to do a dry run. But the other thing of preparation is more like the soft side, and that's actually the content, the story, what you want to tell. For me, there's a difference in that. There's you can either prepare with a fixed story that you want to tell, or improvise.
Preparing is a good thing.
Yeah.
Always. But sometimes we also see that whenever someone is preparing his or her script, is that they are trying to do it learn it by heart, every single word. You can of course also go to the other side of preparing, and I think the creative part and being a bit more spontaneous about the subject. It really depends, of course, on the person that you are and how you want to prepare and how you normally prepare. For me, what I do when I'm preparing for a webinar, and especially if it is about the content, is just write down 2 words per slide or 2 words per subject that I want to talk about, and the rest will come the moment that the webinar is going on, and then I will just make a story out of those 2 most important words that I want to say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I have a completely different way of preparing for a webinar. Of course, I like to write out scripts. It's because the whole video thing and recording videos, I'm constantly recording videos, so I'm used to writing out an entire script. Just word for word, every single word from beginning to end. It's like a whole story. But eventually, I will learn the script and I will pick up what's important in the script, so I know what I'm trying to explain and what I'm trying to tell. But in the end, I will not say the script literally. I will will remember what was in the script, so what's the essence of what I'm trying to say, and I will make up my own words, because if you are going to memorize every single word in your script and you miss a word, then all of a sudden there's a shortage in your head. It's just, oh no, what was that word? I can't remember that word. And then all of a sudden you can't present anymore because you're missing that one single word. Even though without that word you could present the whole webinar without any flaws. But just because you missed that one single word, a laptop goes off. Just because you missed that one.
Improvising right now. So this I actually planned this. I set the timer.
This is also part of preparation, turning off your notifications.
Well, Brian saw that I did turn off. I put on my do not disturb sign, so that's actually pretty funny. But this is a great example actually of how to improvise, because this is something unexpected, unscripted that happened. Also, you can prepare a story. You can prepare what you want to tell, but you'll never know in advance who's going to be your audience. right until the last moment.
Yeah.
And you need to improvise if your audience does not reflect what you had in mind in the first place, because you want your story to adapt to your listeners. So that's why I think preparing in advance your story and like you do, it's great. Actually, like a different example, but Winston Churchill, he rehearsed his speeches like 100 times, but his speeches were so powerful because because every word he knew where to put emphasis, and everybody was like silent. His messages, it just it came so naturally and strong. So there's definitely an important importance there.
And that's of course also the thing with preparing. We are of course now mainly talking about live webinars, like all those things that are happening, or that how you need to like remember the script, just how you like wrote it down. But the moment of like you have certain things that you cannot prepare for. Indeed, a laptop that goes off, or someone who all of a sudden asks you a question that you're completely not prepared for. And that's of course also a bit of the magic of like live webinars, and that you, even though if you would prepare everything, there's always a chance that something happens. It doesn't matter if you're in a studio and all of a sudden the lights like go out, or indeed a notification of a laptop, or someone asking a very difficult question. That also of course shows the human factor in a webinar. So if you are working on your first or maybe webinar number 100, make also sure that those human things that they actually exist in your webinar, because people like to see that as well. It gives people like a feeling that there is a human presenting or hosting the webinar, instead of someone who just like uploaded a recording.
Yeah, it makes it authentic. It makes it really really live. So I think it's also being able to do it like that. Like prepare, but also it's also on a base of trust. You have to trust on your knowledge. You have to trust on your maybe experiences. And it's in even especially when you're doing interactive webinars, you can also it's also an interesting form of co-creation with your audience. You're saying something, someone says something back, and then you can decide, am I going into this direction, which it's unexplored territory at that moment, but it can create a lot of extra value at some point.
Exactly. And it's also of course nice to see that people are responding to so spontaneous things in a certain way, that you also already see like how that person would react in real life.
Yeah.
So that is I think very interesting.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wrote down is that preparing for your webinar is not only of course the webinar itself, but also think about for example a follow-up, or what are you going to do with all the things that happened during your webinar. That's I think also maybe a very important thing to mention. Make sure that you have a plan for after your webinar. Are you going to do some edits in the video that you'll download? They're going to put it on YouTube, for example, or maybe another channel. What are you going to do with all those people who watch the webinar? Also a good idea to have an idea for that. Like, are you going to send them 1 mail, 3 mails? Are you going to forward them to your sales colleagues so that they could continue the conversation after the webinar?
Let's summarize it for a bit. So if you say, for example, someone has to do 5 steps to prepare for the webinar, what would those 5 steps be? What is number 1?
Prepare the
topic.
Okay. I would say prepare the setting, even like the lights, the camera, the background.
Totally. I agree. But like you just said, think before organizing a webinar, that you think about, okay, why am I organizing this? For whom? Who's the audience? How do I get people in my webinar? What steps do I need to take? So I think that would be step 1.
So step 1 is indeed the topic.
And your audience.
And of course indeed who might be interested in this topic. I think step 2 is the setup. So your home studio or your studio like we have, like a real studio. I think number 3 is more what to do with unexpected things that happen, that would happen. Especially if you are, sorry?
Plan for the unknown.
Plan for the unknown, indeed. especially if you are hosting a live webinar. And I think 4.
Yeah, I think if you, step 2, what is interesting is, and that's what we're seeing right now. There are so many forms of webinars. Webinars has become like a word which has so many meanings, because you can either have a keynote session, a presentation we're standing. We could, broadcast this as a webinar as well. We're just having a talk show. So I think that's also, maybe that's part of your preparation, but it can also be part of your setup choices.
Yeah.
How am I going to, which vibe do I want to create? And then after what you said, step number 3 is
Plan for the unknown.
Content.
And I would say 4 is make a plan for what you're going to do with your results. Doesn't matter if it is like I said, forwarding these leads to your sales colleagues or sending them an extra message. And I think step 5, maybe it has maybe nothing to do with preparing, but it has more to do with preparing the next webinar.
Exactly.
It's like how to optimize.
How
to do it better
like
the next time.
Continuous improvement, like a circle. Your webinar is never finished. It's the start of a new one.
So see what the learnings are from your previous webinar and use that as a preparation again for your next webinar.
Yeah, exactly.
It can be the lights, it can be a camera which needs a better angle or whatsoever. It can be the topic which might not be like specific enough, or the audience was asking a lot of questions because they didn't understand anything of what you were saying, or like they came with other expectations than what you were talking about. So all these things can always be improved, and that is of course also how we from WebinarGeek are advising it to our customers. Like try to your first webinar is not the most successful webinar. It is the webinar after that, and so on.
Exactly. All right, so if you could give one tip or trick, either a tip or trick, doesn't matter, about preparing for your webinar. Just one small trick. What would that be?
I would definitely say test, and master the hardware, the software, and your internet stability.
Yeah.
So test those 3 things, and then just test.
Yeah. Because of course, if you test the hardware and you test the software, you don't have to think about where's the button, where's the button for the interaction, how can I mute my microphone, stuff like that. So you don't have to search for that. You know where it is, and it just comes naturally.
If you take 5 minutes of your 5 minutes before the webinar starts just to check this out, well, maybe even a day before, but just 5 minutes already helps you so much with like going and hosting this webinar much like relaxeder than stressed, because you don't know where you can find what and what button to click on.
Yeah, exactly.
That helps a lot.
For me personally, it's all about the improvisation. If you're really good at improvising, you'll never be stressful in hosting live events, because you will learn how to trust on your knowledge, on your skills, on the ability to pivot the situation in something maybe even better. There's a lot of classes and learnings which you can actually take, improvisation classes. I actually learn my kids how to improvise as well. I sometimes start a story and they have to finish it, and then it comes back to me as well. It's like a circle, and then we're like in minutes it goes all it's pretty funny, but I think it gives so much trust in the situation when you're hosting a webinar.
Yeah, indeed, good idea. Also, indeed, be open for improvise. That's, I think, the best thing. Because if you do not feel comfortable with improvising, then definitely, then at least the tip is try to be open for like improvising here and there.
Yeah, and then the question which comes with that is, would you host a webinar which is 100% improvised?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. There are things you need to prepare, because if you do not prepare and you only just improvise, you might miss the whole point of the webinar. You miss important questions, and your webinar is just all over the place. So there needs to be at least some kind of timeline, some kind of structure to your webinar. Within that structure, improvise like it's your day job. There has to be structure.
I agree. It gives structure, and even people will probably leave the webinar if it's like too chaotic. You can also go into a different direction or miss the goal. Improvising is a risk. Yeah, great.
Awesome. I like that advice. Thank you guys. Thank you for being here
You're
today.
welcome.
Yes, you're welcome.
And of course, I hope you enjoyed this episode of today. If you want to know more, please subscribe to our podcast, and we'll hope to see you on the next one.